The moment Duran stepped into the lobby, he sensed something was wrong. Security didn't smile. Phones didn't ring. Then the sirens came. Officers poured through the glass doors. Duran Cole, you're under arrest for armed robbery. Amara stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. What? From the top floor, DeMeji watched in silence. His white suit glowed under the morning light, his face unreadable. He didn't move, just turned away like he'd been expecting this all along. News spread like wildfire. Billionaire's twin arrested, trended within the hour. But DeMeji, as always, was composed. At a press briefing, he assured the public of the company's stability, expressed shock, and pledged to assist law enforcement. He walked past flashing cameras with the poise of a man untouched. Amara sat at her desk, pretending to work, but her mind was stuck on Duran's silence, on DeMeji's calm, on how none of it made sense. Just 2 months earlier, Amara's name had appeared on a frosted glass door. Executive assistant to the CEO. She'd stared at it through tears. A girl from Ayagunle, now standing in one of Lagos' most powerful offices. DeMeji had welcomed her personally, confident, dazzling, his white suit crisp, his voice warm. "We lift people here," he had said. And she'd believed him. But it was Duran who stayed late with her, who brought her a kara when she forgot to eat, who never looked at her like she owed him. He'd once laughed beside her in the break room and said, "My brother, he cleans up well, doesn't he?" Back then, she'd smiled. Now she wondered what he meant. The whispers grew. A street vendor told an officer, "I saw someone that night, looked just like the billionaire. Same face, scar on the neck." The officer laughed. "You mean DeMeji Cole? Go sleep." The statement was tossed aside, but the vendor's words clung to the walls like smoke. 3 nights before the arrest, somewhere far from the company's marble floors, a figure moved across a dark rooftop, dressed in black, mask over his face. He moved like wind through shadow. The job was clean, silent vaults, no blood. But just before vanishing into the alley, the wind caught his hood. For a split second, a CCTV camera captured the truth. A faint scar beneath the jawline. Amara couldn't sleep. She remembered seeing DeMeji walk in late that week, his collar slightly raised. She had noticed the scar then, just for a second, but it hadn't meant anything. Now it pulsed behind her eyes, a scar just like the one in the footage, the same one Duran didn't have. The day before the arrest, Duran had come to her office quietly. He closed the door and sat across from her. "Amara," he said, a voice low. "If anything feels off, don't ignore it." She blinked, confused. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. Not everything that shines is gold. Then he left without waiting for a response. Later that night, she saw DeMeji on the office balcony, phone to his ear, bathed in city lights. He stood perfectly still, speaking softly. Then he turned, just enough to see her watching. Their eyes met. He didn't look away. Neither did she. The heist made national news the next morning. No alarms, no witnesses, a ghost job. But Amara found herself in the server room hours later, staring at a blurry rooftop clip. She played it again and again. The figure, the wind, the scar. That same afternoon, DeMeji called a sudden board meeting. Calm, sharp, prepared. He presented documents, mismanaged funds, suspicious activity, signs pointing to Duran. The directors were shocked. Amara watched from the corner, her stomach twisting. Duran walked in late. He didn't argue, didn't explain. Just looked at his brother, and in that silence, something passed between them, something ancient and broken. Afterward, she found Duran in the stairwell. His jacket was off, his tie hung loose. He leaned against the wall, eyes on the floor. "He's making a move," he said quietly. "And I think I'm the prize." She tried to ask what he meant, but the words didn't come. The next morning, it all fell apart. The sirens, the cuffs, Dieren's silence. Amara watched as he was taken. He turned to her once, eyes steady. "Stay awake," he said. Upstairs, Dimeji sipped coffee behind glass. The board released a statement before noon. The company remained strong. But Amara knew something had broken, something deep and invisible, and possibly beyond repair. The metal door creaked and slammed, and Duran didn't flinch. He sat on the hard bench like a man already used to silence. His fingers traced the edge of his cuff, slow, controlled. But his mind was elsewhere, still in the lobby, still seeing Amara's face as the cuffs clicked shut. He hadn't begged. He never would. But he'd wanted her to see him clearly, just once more. Meanwhile, across Lagos, spotlights glowed on a podium draped in velvet blue. Dimeji Cole stood tall before reporters, flawless in his white suit. "This has been difficult," he said, his voice full of practiced ache. "But justice will take its course. I stand with the truth." Cameras clicked. Applause followed. Not a single person asked why his voice never cracked. Back at the office, the world spun like nothing had happened. Memos came, coffee brewed, phones rang. But Amara walked through it like glass, everything reflecting, nothing real. Duran's chair sat empty beside her. Dimeji passed her in the hallway and paused. "You holding up?" he asked, soft. She nodded, too afraid of the shaking in her voice. He smiled and walked on. That night, her ceiling stared back at her. She tried not to replay the footage, but the image came anyway, frame by frame. The masked figure in the alley, the hood lifting, the brief glimpse of skin, a scar, right where Dimeji's was. She told herself it meant nothing, but something deep inside refused to believe her. She went to see Duran the next day. The station was quiet. He looked thinner, but not broken. "I didn't think you'd come," he said gently. She didn't ask how he was. She just leaned forward and whispered, "It wasn't you, was it?" He looked at her and then touched his neck. "You got the scar for me," he said, "years ago, when things still made sense." He didn't have to say anything else. Later that week, Amara stood in Makoko, the muddy path to the orphanage soft under her shoes. The air smelled of rain and charcoal. Mama Tola welcomed her with tired warmth. "The twins," she said, shaking her head. "They were fire and bone. Dimeji once fought off a thief with a broken bottle, took the blade for his brother." She touched her own neck. The scar stayed. But boys grow up, and sometimes they forget who they were. The gala came fast. Dimeji had sent her a dress, gold and graceful. She wore it with a quiet dread. When he offered his arm, she took it, pulse quick beneath her skin. The crowd adored him. "He's still standing," they whispered. "Such a strong man." Amara smiled, but each time she looked up at him, the scar peeked through like a ghost, whispering her name. Across the city, Inspector Ajani stared at the CCTV frame, frozen, mid-blur. The scar was there, not on the man in the cell. He played it again. The angle was rough, but the detail was sharp enough. He jotted down a note. "Scar on right jawline. Matches Dimeji Cole." Then he leaned back, eyes narrowing. Something stank, and it wasn't just the case. Amara found the folded note 2 days later. No name. Just a warning. Stop digging or join him inside. She stared at it, pulse rising. That afternoon, Dimeji sat beside her in the company lounge, sipping tea. "You've been distracted," he said gently. "I notice these things." She gave him a quiet smile. "Just tired." He smiled back, but something in his gaze lingered too long. The award night was filled with cameras and praise. Demeji took the stage like it was built for him, smiling as the crowd stood. "Thank you," he said, emotion perfectly measured. "We rise by lifting others." Amara stood in the back, eyes locked on him. Ajani was beside her, arms folded, face hard. As Demeji raised his glass, his head tilted, and the scar caught the light. It glinted like a blade, like truth, buried just beneath the applause. Lagos had come out in silk and sequins to celebrate a man they believed in. Demeji Cole moved through the crowd with ease, handshakes and camera flashes chasing him. Amara stood at the edge of the room, still in the gown he had once gifted her. She didn't clap. She just watched. Behind her, Ajani leaned on the wall, eyes sharp. "The louder they cheer," he muttered, "the more they cover." She tried to speak once, told a reporter at the gala that there was more to the story, something the world wasn't seeing. He laughed. "Sweetheart, you were his assistant. Don't embarrass yourself." By morning, the headlines mocked her. Jealous ex-employee targets, Demeji Cole with wild conspiracy. At work, people stopped greeting her. Her emails went unanswered. The door to Demeji's office remained closed, but she could still feel his eyes. She went to see Diran again. He sat cross-legged in the center of the cell like he was praying. When he saw her, his expression softened. "They're sentencing me next week," he said. She couldn't speak. "I never hated him," he continued, voice low. "He's still my brother." Her throat tightened. "The world chose its hero," he added, looking past her. "But don't let it bury the truth in you, too." Back at the office, a drawer no one touched revealed what she wasn't ready for. A journal worn, full of sketches and old ink. Demeji's name was written inside the front cover. It started with dreams, childhood ambitions. Then the tone shifted. "What if this city never cared how I got rich? Only that I looked the part." Pages later, "I protect what's mine, even if I have to become what they fear." Amara closed the book slowly, breath shallow. The scar wasn't just on his neck, it was in his soul. Ajani stood on a rooftop in Yaba, city lights pulsing below. "I submitted a full report," he told her. "Evidence, timeline, footage." He paused. "They shelved it. Told me to think about my future." Amara didn't look surprised. She handed him the journal. "This is all I have left." He held it like a fragile truth. "Then we'll tell it," he said, "whether they listen or not." The next day, a street vendor swept behind his stall and found a forgotten phone. Curious, he charged it. One number in the log. It rang. A voice answered. Calm, cold. "You shouldn't have touched this." He handed it over to Ajani that evening. The texts inside were chilling. Location markers, getaway routes, a voice memo naming the crew. Amara read them with shaking fingers. "This could undo everything," he whispered. But as they stood there, headlights flickered down the alley and didn't stop. Demeji invited her to his penthouse that night. No threats, no anger, just him, alone in the quiet glow of city lights. "You don't have to fight," he said, offering her a drink she didn't touch. "You could have anything. Comfort, safety, even me." She didn't answer. "You framed him," she finally said. His silence was loud. "I protected what I built," he replied, pouring himself a drink instead. As she reached the door, he added, without turning, "You won't win. No one listens to truth, not when they're comfortable." The courtroom was too bright, too still. Diran stood without resistance, shoulders steady. The verdict landed like a quiet gunshot. Guilty? No gasp. No outcry. Only the scribble of pens and the click of cameras. Demeji arrived late, offered the press a solemn nod. Justice has spoken. Amara stood in the back row, hands shaking, the journal pressed against her ribs. The scar was gone from view, but not from her heart. That night, the ballroom roared again. Another award, another standing ovation. Demeji raised his glass with grace. Ajani stood beside Amara, silent. "He wins," she whispered. Ajani said nothing. As Demeji turned, the spotlight shifted, and for the briefest second his collar dipped. The scar shimmered in the light. Then the music swelled. The crowd clapped louder, and the truth disappeared again, beneath applause.